are harmed. And so we must save science and save lives.
Hello. This is Scott Turner. I'm Director of Science Programs at the National Association of Scholars. We're here at Washington, D.C. on Constitution Mall. We're sitting here in front of the National Academy of Sciences, and you can see behind me the very famous statue of Albert Einstein. We're here today to document a protest against the recently announced cuts in indirect costs funding by the NIH. Basically, we're looking at reducing the indirect costs from 60% of the so-called direct costs, that is the money that's used to actually support research, down to 15% of the direct costs. This is about a 75% reduction. And as occurred the last time this was tried in the first Trump administration, this has elicited some tremendously vocal protests, and we're here for that rally to protest this. It's called Stand Up for Science. It's the home rally for a host of other subsidiary rallies nationwide. So we're here to document it and to see what it's like. If Stand Up for Science is anything like the previous march, which was called the March for Science, that march in 2017 drew about 100,000 people to the National Mall, and almost 1 million people worldwide. We're going to see if that brings out as many people here. The rally itself is supposed to start in a couple of hours, and so we'll document it, and I hope to have some fun with it, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it looks like it's off to the revolution.
The rally opened with an excerpt from Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech to the 1963 March for Jobs and Freedom, which filled the National Mall with 250,000 people.
We hope these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
As I mentioned just now, the 2017 March for Science drew about 100,000 protesters to the same location. To be fair, the organizers for Stand Up for Science did not expect to match that.
Yeah. Do you know how many people are going to show up today? Any figures on the attendance?
They're expecting a good turnout.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the latest estimates.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the March for Science. There are nearly 100,000 people on the mall then,
That
so.
was planned a lot further.
Was it? Okay.
In advance.
All right.
Than this one, so I know there were groups that were like bringing in buses from different people.
Yeah.
So probably won't be the same size as the March for Science, but I think it'll be a really good turnout. And what'll be more exciting even is how many people go to all the solidarity actions. So at the beginning of the week there were like 40 or 50, and then as of today there were 135 actions across the country. And honestly, I'd almost rather have people in Florida and Iowa and Minnesota taking to the streets and showing why this is important in their districts than just the DMV.
Okay, well, good luck today.
And they weren't disappointed. I estimated about 1,000 people in attendance. There were lots of handmade signs in the crowd. This had to be a grassroots protest against cuts in science, right? Here are some of my favorites. Elon Musk was the favorite hate object. For some reason, Stand With Ukraine made an appearance. Nazis are obviously bad. Diseases are also bad.
United States government, do you?
Even dogs were getting into the act. But the most numerous signs in the crowd that day were from the United Auto Workers. This was not a grassroots protest by beleaguered scientists. This was UAW astroturf. The United Auto Workers was at Stand Up for Science because they are the official bargaining rep for NIH Fellows United, which was established in 2023 to represent about 5,000 postdocs and graduate students enrolled in training programs at the NIH. Something about these positions. These are not meant to be full-time jobs, but opportunities for postdocs and graduate students to be mentored under the supervision of established NIH scientists. Through NIH Fellows United, the UAW now controls those positions through a 78-page contract that specifies salaries, benefits, leave, relocation, and dispute resolution. So, NIH trainees are now in roughly the same position as fast food workers agitating for a living minimum wage. A fellowship at NIH is no longer a coveted and prestigious training opportunity, it's an entitled job. NIH Fellows United is the latest success in the UAW's nationwide movement to unionize graduate students and postdocs. And in typical labor speak, students, postdocs, and scientists are now cast as science workers. Not science discoverers, but science workers. And this is why Stand Up for Science was UAW astroturfing. It was not about standing up for science, it was about agitating for better pay and conditions for their union members. Here are the policy goals that Stand Up for Science is advocating. They want to see a 20% increase of government funding of science over 3 years. For the NIH, this is mostly through grants to support research in universities. They also want to maintain the status quo for indirect costs, keeping it at its current average rate of 53% of direct costs, that is, the amount of money that directly supports research. Okay, let's look at those supposed drastic cuts in science funding, all those potential cures that will remain undiscovered because there'll no longer be the funds to discover them. How real is that? So let's look at the numbers. Here are the 2024 and 2025 federal allocations for science, tabulated according to the agency funding it. Just comparing the 2024 allocation with 2025's, it does look like a cut of about $7.5 billion. Most of this is in defense R&D. Look at the NIH allocation. There actually has been no change in allocation from 2024 to 2025. And the same is true for the Department of Energy, NASA, the National Science Foundation, and the Bureau of Veterans Affairs. The USDA, Interior Department, and several other smaller agencies will have their research allocations reduced by modest amounts. But let's remember, these are total allocations, which are direct costs and indirect costs combined. To see the real impact on research funding, let's switch to another table. Comparing the 2025 allocation to last year's, there's that apparent cut of about $7.5 billion, from $201 billion in 2024 to $193 billion in 2025. But let's look at those indirect costs. If indirect costs are set at 50%, again close to the national average of 53%, about $65 billion goes into indirect costs. This is the status quo that Stand Up for Science wants to preserve. Cutting indirect costs to 15% reduces those indirect cost payments to about $25 billion. This will result in a net increase of direct funding of research by about $40 billion. The increase will vary from agency to agency, For health and human services alone, where the NIH sits, and where those cures are just waiting to be found, there will be about $10 billion more available to support research. In short, there are no cuts in funding for research. Claims that there are pure gaslighting. And let's remind ourselves again what indirect costs are. They are federal subsidies to universities to support their core mission of research. Cutting indirect costs are a way of prompting universities to step up and support their core missions more themselves. They are more than capable of doing so.